You are now listening to Handsome Reads. Well, looky here. Another day in the land of the living. And of course, the simple things are our blessings. And in the words of my fellow countryman, from you wake up this morning, you's a winner. For my international listeners and viewers, the translation is from the moment you wake up to another day, you have already won. Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Handsome Reads. I am, of course, your handsome, honored, very happy, and esteemed host, SKA Obasi. On a more serious note, before we dive back into the thick of Army of Sin, I just want to let you know that whatever it is you are going through, there is most definitely a solution. And those solutions already exist within you. A couple of announcements before we move on. In an effort to eventually have this series picked up by any of the major streaming platforms or production companies, I would like to offer you the simple mission, if you choose to accept, of sharing our series with your own social media. Additionally, you can follow for bonus content on Instagram and TikTok at Handsome Reads and catch video versions of this podcast on YouTube. If you're already looking at this on YouTube, this does not apply to you. Audio episodes are uploaded on Thursdays, while you can catch the YouTube versions on Sundays. For today's episode, I know some of you may have been wondering what is going on with the other half of the story. We were with Henri for a while. He had his conversations between immortals. But now, today's episode, we pivot back to the Martin brothers. Today's episode is entitled Lie to Me. And this scene is set in the beautiful Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. What are we doing here? Rand mused, legs shoulder width apart, with arms folded. I don't know, replied the one who held his heart captive. Liar. Then tell me, Mr. Know-it-all, Kaya snapped, fighting the urge to tuck a rebellious lock away from her smooth face. Rand refused to back down. No, you have to stop running and tell me. I don't have to tell you jack shit, she bit out, temper flaring in a way that only seemed to incite Rand, the tiny muscles of her jaw clenching to mar her once cool exterior. There was always the need to crowd her personal space, not just to put hands on her skin, not merely to pull her stiff form against his frame. No, it was way deeper. A visceral need to disturb the very air molecules in which she stood. If only to see the subtle lean of her body as he approached, to stare as deeply as she could into the light brown of her eyes. The waning sunlight behind them signaled the ebb of time for Rand. Darkness heralded the arrival of not only mosquitoes and other pests, but the reminder that he had a summons to return to. He would not leave Liam unprotected, not even for the woman that stood before him. I cannot keep this up. I need to be free of you. How do you suggest we do that? He asked gently, the fear of possible loss gentling his tone. with some time away from each other. And these past 2 years, that wasn't enough? Obviously not. Not when you're in here, she cried, rubbing the heel of her palm against the ache resonating beneath her breastbone. I can't change what happened, Kaya. I can't undo it. I know, it's just I can't give you up either. Hand slashing through the air in rejection of the notion. I tried, and it was the worst thing I ever attempted. Kaya stepped into his space, eyes growing darker as the sun dipped below a layer of cloud, its orange glow reaching up to her hips. Why does it always have to be on your timing? Jabbing her finger into the firm muscles of his chest, she continued. It's always what you want. Rand's lungs burned with the breath he held, his neurons quick firing in response to her assertiveness. His temper surged, amplified by the physical contact. Closing his eyes, he exhaled the breath slowly through his nose. I can't look at you and not remember. This is who I am, Kay. Do you love me? Rand asked softly. I don't know what love is. And this, between us? He asked with a raised eyebrow. Mutual obsession, perhaps, she said, simultaneously fisting her hands in the material covering his chest. Rand latched onto the anchor of her lips, as inside he felt his stomach do a backflip. He felt lightheaded as her lips shifted over his own. He clasped his hands behind his back, nails digging into his wrists, his handcuffs of choice, yet she claimed she wanted to be free of him. Kaya's body went haywire as she teased Rand's stiff frame. She couldn't explain what made her so bold and uninhibited around him. She had no recollection of moving against him or how his clothes were now gripped in her fists. Now, as she gorged herself on the lush lips occupying such a serious face, she threw caution to the wind. On the heels of her last thought, she felt his body flex, knowing he was losing the battle of control. His lips parting to capture the tongue she swept across the seam of his mouth. The heat of the palms, which pressed against her ribcage, made her heart swell, clothes suddenly feeling too tight as everything became terrifyingly Rand. Not even the breath she tried to take felt like her own. She let go of the front of his t-shirt, tearing her lips from the luscious pull of his own, and just in time. His palms had just begun their respective roaming. One to slide down her lower back, the other sweeping higher, below her locks, to cup the back of her neck. What the hell? Rand swore, the front of his top now properly rumpled. Lips bearing a slight sheen of saliva they had both just shared. This is goodbye, Rand. I'm sorry, she said, touching a finger to her kiss-swollen lips. The dark brown within his eyes traced the movement of her finger before looking into her eyes with that penetrating stare. Like hell this is. To be continued. Yep. The it's a lot. It's a lot for good old Rand. And Kaya too. when you think about it from a female perspective, that is indeed quite a conundrum that those two individuals find them in atop that mountain. There is more. There's always more. I mean, we're still in season 1. But unfortunately, our time today has indeed come to an end. I do hope you enjoy the rest of your morning, noon, afternoon, evening, or night, depending on where this episode finds you. Do take good care of yourself, and until next time, love and light.